Welcome to Monkey Chatter. Monkey Chatter is a podcast by three great friends who have different perspectives on all things wellness. So let's jump right into today's topic.
Welcome to Monkey Chatter. This is Amy. I'm here with Lara and Michelle, as always. And this is actually the first of our three-part series where we get to have a little fun and interview each other. So Michelle has graciously agreed to go first. And so this should be kind of fun. Should be a nice little fun experiment. Lara and I have kind of come up with our list of questions for her, and we'll see what her answers are. So, yeah. So I don't know, Michelle, I don't really have an intro for you. I mean, obviously I know you really well, but I don't have anything official for you. But I can speak from experience, and Lara probably can too, that you are an amazing coach, whether you want to admit it or not. And have been a phone-a-friend on way more than one occasion.
It's my favorite role.
Yeah. So you don't always give yourself enough credit for that. But yes, you are an amazing coach. So but I'll let you probably, I'm sure as we go through this, you'll talk a little bit about what some of the things that you've done and all of that, so you can fill the people in. And yeah. So Lara, do you want to go first? I feel like we're like an official little interviewing.
Okay.
here.
All right. I'm ready.
Fire away.
I'll take the role of interviewer first. So this whole series that we're doing is really for the benefit of our audience to get to know each of us a little bit better. And I do have a couple of questions, but before I just ask the questions, I was gonna say maybe you should tell the audience just like
tell our people.
Yeah, tell us like who you are and what you do in the real world. And I mean, I think people, if they watched our last episode, we talked about how we all met and came together, but maybe just give us a quick overview of who Michelle is.
Oh, yikes. Okay.
Like your own intro.
My own
We know
intro.
you're a coach, but like what kind of coach, and how long have you been doing that, and what else do you do?
Yeah, I won't bore you with, I was born in and then. So we'll just cut right to where I started down the coaching path. So my work life is in the area of sales and marketing. So that's like my day job, right? And so about, I don't know, quite a few years into that, I started to lose my mind a little. And I got really bored with what I was doing. Like there was nothing wrong with it. I just was really bored. So I started trying to figure out, as one does, do I ditch this job and go do something else? Or is there a way I can stay doing what I'm doing, but get something for my brain? And I'd always been interested in coaching and personal development, and had been playing in that space unofficially since my 20s. So it had been something I was interested in. And then there was this ag leadership program that came across my email, and I thought, well, maybe this is something that could help me get through this rough patch that I'm having. And it's a program called Lead New York. It's a two-year program, and had an international field trip in there. So we got to go to Turkey and see some things. But that really prompted me, because every weekend you would go somewhere and you would learn something in that personal development leadership space. And that really started to help me feel a lot better about what I was doing, and using my brain, forcing me to get a little, comfortable with discomfort. There were a lot of uncomfortable things in that program. Not the least of which was that international trip to Turkey, because I hadn't really ever traveled internationally in that way. So that got me started. And when I got done with that, I was like, well, I can't just go back to, my normal work life without some sort of distraction. So I was working with a coach, probably one of the most wonderful coaches I've ever worked with. She's since passed away, but her name was Nancy Duncan, and she was a masterful coach. Like, I can't think of a better word to describe her. And I had asked her, I said, "Oh, I keep having this Equus coaching thing come across um, my email, or, just it kept showing up." And I'm like, that just sounds ridiculous. Like, who would pay that kind of money to go do? What are they doing? And it was just, and I remember it had like a $50 application fee or something. And I was like, I don't even think I'm going to apply. $50. And she was like, "Okay, Michelle, you would spend $50 on a bottle of wine. Like, you need to just apply." And so I did, and that's a whole interesting story. So I'm certified as an Equus coach. And that was a 2-year program, and travel to California and Arizona. And, I tend to pick these things that are not, the weekend, you go for 3 days and you're certified. No, I want the ones that cost you thousands of dollars and makes you travel across the country, and it takes years to accomplish. Like those, that's, my jam. So I finished that, and then was like, well, now what do I do? And that was when I decided I should balance some of the woo-woo coaching of the Equus coaching with something more structured. And I got introduced to, as one does, you Google around trying to find out what are the best, most respected coaching programs out there. And so the International Coaching Federation is sort of the umbrella federation that loosely, holds the guidelines. And as with a lot of this stuff, like, it's not really well regulated, and so anybody can hang a shingle as a coach. And I wasn't really after that. I was after something that had some structure to it. So one of the top programs through the International Coaching Federation is the Coactive Coaching Program, which of course is, again, another like 2-year program that I had to go to Washington, D.C. like every other weekend and do all these in-person things. So I'm certified as a coactive coach. And then I did do my certification as what they call an ACC, which is the lowest level of certification in the International Coaching Federation system. And because I never really did anything with all of these certifications, I didn't keep that one, which now it's one of those things where you're like, oh, I really should have kept that, because to recertify is a huge process. But so that's kind of, and then through, as with anything else, right, through the process of getting certified, you start to meet all these other people in that same space. And then you come across these other cool opportunities, right? So, the week-long workshop on navigating challenging dialogue, like that was a great program. And then you got to do the Martha Beck summer programs, where so I'm one of those. I'm a learning junkie. And but I am actually have multiple certifications as a coach. So yes, I am certified as a coach. Bottom line, there you go. That should have been a much shorter answer to what was a really easy question. Sorry.
Oh no, it was great. I mean, I think it gives everybody a little deeper picture, maybe into like your experience, your certifications, your credibility, all of that. Even though, like, whenever you speak, you don't need any credibility, because you do always just ask the best questions. So I guess a question I have for you then would be, what do you think, maybe there was an event or a circumstance or something, maybe a person in your past, what influenced you and your curiosity? Like, what made you have this interest in lifelong learning? Yeah, you're the curious monkey for a reason. So can you think of what maybe spurred that?
That, right, when you start to think back, like what are the things that shape you and make you who you are, right? It's so multifaceted. But my parents were really, really big supporters of reading, right? Like go out, the two things. If it's nice out, go outside and do something. And I don't want to know about it. Just go do something and come home when it's time to eat. So that was the one thing. You had to go outside and do your own thing. But if it was, raining or you had to be inside or whatever, yeah, we were really encouraged to read. And when I think about, and I loved reading. You hear about people who say that they traveled the world as a kid through books. That was me. I felt like you could go anywhere if you just picked up a book, and I did. Like that's what I did. And I can remember my mom. There would be days when I wouldn't want to go to school, in those tween years that really kind of suck sometimes, everybody's mad at you or your best friend is ditching you or whatever, but you don't want to go to school. And I would fake sick, shocking, I know. And I would just stay in my room and she would let me, I think she, moms are amazing. So good job, Lara. You're an amazing mom. But they kind of have that sense of yeah, I think she really does need a mental health day. And so she'd be like, you need to stay in your room though if you're home and you're really sick. And I'd be like, okay, because I'd have a big fat book I was really ready to dig into. And so that was always a huge escape for me. But the curious part, I think, mostly comes from my dad's side of the family. My father was always really as a young kid, before we moved to, the Adirondacks, when we lived down near the city, my dad was a salesman for a company and he traveled internationally. So he was always coming back from these really cool places. He'd go to Europe and Puerto Rico and, he'd always come home with great stories, and he was a really good storyteller. So he had that about him. And then his mother, my grandmother, came from sort of, I don't know how to describe it. She was Czechoslovakian, and she always had sort of this mystical part of her. Like when I would run away from home and go to her house, she would sit me down and read tea leaves for me. And so she had a different approach to life that was so always kind of magical and why not? And she would create these amazing, again, storytellers, right? All around me. They would tell you and you're like, oh, this is so cool. And so I think that's where I really started to want to create stories, right? Or create experiences for people, right? And
was she a little of the woo? Did she bring a little of the woo?
Oh, she did. I mean, she even looked she was so amazing. I could talk about her for years. She was pretty woo-woo. Yeah. But really had to be, because my grandfather was very conservative, Irish, there are rules in this house. And, and then she's sneaking you the, baklava under the table. Oh, there's rules, but there's, the other rules, So I think I was just really encouraged to use my imagination and yeah. And I definitely was one of those kids who used to get in trouble all the time, shocking, for talking in class too much. And yeah. And so I just had a lot of questions. I wanted to know things. And, I think it started there. I think I just was really lucky. I had good parents and interesting grandparents. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, that's I mean, I could totally see you locking yourself away in a room with a book for hours, just
Loved
being
it.
totally into it and knowing you and being fascinated by grandma's tea leaves and having her
I
teach you
still have
that.
her teapot. I really, I
Oh,
should get that out and do some tea. And every once in a while, when I think about things I'd like to do when I have time in whatever comes next, I really would love to learn the art of reading tea leaves. She was amazing. It was so cool. That was one of the coolest memories I have of my childhood.
that's so cool. Does okay, so this is on the woo-woo, but so do you, but you've studied some of this. So when you do meditations or when you kind of, come up with ways to get in touch with like your inner self or your higher power, does she show up for you?
So funny. Yes. Yeah. So, you get, when you go through coach training, regardless of how non woo woo it's structured, there's a lot of woo woo. Sorry, there just is. And,
Don't be sorry.
and
Nothing wrong with it.
like, I'm still apologizing for it. Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
Lots of questions with that.
What
But
does that mean?
there's an exercise that you do, and one of the, it's a guided sort of exercise, but it's supposed to take you to, sort of that space, whatever that is for you, where you, feel safe and can ask those questions. And she is always there, always in some form. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, what was her name? We need to do a little shout out.
So here's an interesting thing. My brother and I were just talking about this. So I think on her obituary, they called her Mildred. It was Mildred Mulcahy. However, when we started doing some genealogy, a lot of like the original paperwork has her as Emily or Amelia, like when she first came over. So, somehow when they were filling out paperwork, she became Mildred instead of so again, another project for when I have time. Like, I would love to dig into all that more and find out the whole story. But they called her Millie. She looked like Mrs. Claus. Like, if you had to picture Santa Claus's, yeah, that was her. And in her heyday, she was pretty hot, like really hot. And then like, I saw some pictures of hers in her little bathing suit. I'm like, oh, I know my grandfather picked her for a reason. But she was.
Call her, like, was she Granny, Grandma?
She was Grandma. Yeah.
Grandma Millie, or
just Grandma.
Just
yeah.
Grandma.
Yeah.
I'm always fascinated at what people call their grandparents. I mean, I live in Kentucky now, and I mean, you would not believe. Some of them are pretty crazy. Yeah. So Grandma is pretty, pretty normal.
It was pretty basic. Yeah. Pretty calm. Yeah. Yeah.
I love it. Amy, do you want to go, or do you want me to ask I have another question, but we can switch back and forth, or we can keep on this thread.
It doesn't matter.
Okay, so it's still fun.
Yeah, let's switch it up, and then I'll ask mine next.
So, several questions for you, but this one,
no shocker.
I know. Get to play curious. This one stuck out to me. So you have definitely been the self-proclaimed resistant little creature. I think you've said that more than once on this podcast.
I kind of like it. I'm like, oh, that's a good little way to describe myself that doesn't make me sound like a complete, Yeah.
So, as a self-proclaimed resistant little creature, why do you think people, like, even with coaching, are so, obviously I'm on the fitness nutrition side of stuff, and you're on a bit of a different side, but so why do you think even with coaching, people still can be really resistant?
Yeah. The first thing I want to say to that, think how bad I'd be if I didn't get coached. Right? Like, I think about that quite often because I'm like, well, and this is not to be like, dramatic or whatever, but looking back over my life, if I hadn't found, and I've done the therapy thing too, so I like whoever can help me, I'm all about that. Like, I definitely got over my don't ask for help thing really early. I was like, I clearly need some help because I am not figuring this out. But if I hadn't had the opportunity to work with coaches and some of the other folks, I'm not sure how I would have really made it this far as well as I have. So I'll just leave it at that. And so I think without coaching, and without folks who encourage you or, that you run across that make a difference, my life would have looked very different. Part two of your question, though, like, what is that? And I would say for me, and I can't speak for everybody, but I do think most of the clients that I have coached, and certainly I can speak for myself, underlying it all, there's always some fear of something, right? It's fear. And that can take a different form for everybody. Like, so people who are like big time risk takers, which is sort of the opposite of me, a lot of times those folks are driven by fear as well, right? It's a different type of fear. My fear is, after all the years of therapy and coaching, I think mostly my fear just comes from my childhood and a need for security. Like, I think my dad had a really bad accident when I was 9. He was 30, so he fell off a roof and was paralyzed from the waist down. Had just left his corporate job to follow his dream, right? So you get all kinds of messages around, well, sometimes following that dream, it doesn't work out really well. That could be bad. So I think when you have examples early on of how bad things can happen to good people, for lack of a better phrase, that it sort of changes your relationship with fear. And I think for some people, it probably goes the other way, where they're like, well, screw it. I'm just going to take all kinds of chances. For me, I tend to trade everything for financial safety and security. I will default to that, even if it's something I really want. And, I think back because I think on one of the earlier podcasts, I had mentioned, left to my own devices, I probably would have, I'd just like to go be a PhD in freaking English literature or something. Like, I would have been probably great in academia. Like, let me just go learn things and, share things and whatever. And I got the message pretty early on that, like, that wasn't an acceptable path, right? Like, you can't just go to school for your whole life. You need to go get a job. So I think for me, it comes down to a fear of somehow losing everything, like all the coachy things. So years ago, I went through some sort of training with somebody, and you had to, there's so
One of the
many.
25.
After a while, you just go, where did that come from? But you had to pick your gremlin. Did either of you guys ever get that book? What's it called? Knowing Your Gremlin, or something about your gremlin. But it's basically uncovering, your in coachy terms, your saboteurs, right? Like, what shows up. So, but this was really fun because you got to sort of name them and make them into pictures. And so mine was this homeless lady. And have you ever seen those cards of the lady with the lemons? Have you ever seen the
Yes.
cards with the lady with the lemons? Yeah,
Yeah, she's like in a little black dress with a hat, and she looks kind of
always
homeless.
crabby.
Yeah,
Yeah, always
crabby. Her hair's
crabby.
all messed up.
Yes. If life gives you lemons, stuff them in your bra. Can't hurt my,
Yeah,
that kind of
it's
thing.
actually really funny.
So she's the image pushing a, shopping cart. So my biggest fear has always been ending up homeless, and with no money. So
Wow.
that drives
There's
everything. I
so
mean,
much to unpack
it
there,
is.
Michelle.
It's crazy. And trust me, all the coaches and therapists and whatever, they're like, okay, well, I think we got to the root of
Yeah.
that. The trick, though, Amy, is how do you overcome that? And I have done tons of things that I never thought I would do, mostly because of people like you, who I pepper my life with, right? So I tend to, because I do sort of at my core want to take the risk or do the magical thing, and I believe in the woo-woo. Like, I believe that you can manifest whatever. I see it all the time. Look, Lara, you're a great example. I see it all the time. But for somewhere along the way, yes, I believe in it 100% for everybody else, but not for me, right? Like, if I take the risk, it won't end up like that for me. It'll end up like it did for my dad, right?
Yeah, that sounds like it was such a big impact on you. And that's, let's face it, that's a huge traumatic thing to go through, not just you, but your family.
Oh, yeah.
And that's got to have a big impact. I'm glad you shared that one. I'm glad you shared that with us.
And I think one of the things that back then, now there are support and things that, are but back then there was nothing. Like my mom, God bless her, like my brother and I were talking about this the other day that we can't imagine. I mean, here she is. She's like 31 years old. She's just moved. She's got no job. Her husband now is in the hospital now for months. She's got 3 kids under the age of 9. And what do you do? Now the wonderful thing about that was we had moved up here, so her family was here. So we had a lot of family support, but man, when you're on food stamps and you have the red lunch ticket, you never forget that ever.
No.
Yeah.
I'm so glad you shared that story because I think it can inspire people on 2 levels. One, you have made a very nice life for yourself. You have a home and you travel and you have had horses and you're doing a lot of the things you love. And more recently, you've done the bigger steps of like stepping outside that comfort zone, going on these coaching, getting certified, traveling, doing all these things. I mean, heck, we jumped on a plane and went to Belize without any knowing anything, all
I would
3 of us
never have done
together.
that without the 2 of you though, right? Like,
But that's okay.
yeah, ever. Nor would I be going to the gym and picking up heavy things if it wasn't for Amy. So,
and it's all, like we said many times on this podcast, it's never too late, it's never too early, right?
Mhm.
And it's never too
That should be
little.
our tagline.
it's never too late.
That
It's
will
never
change
too
our
late.
yeah.
Although I do think it also is, your life is so, I shouldn't say your life. My experience has been that your life can be so impacted by the people you choose to surround yourself with. That whole thing about like the 5 people who are in your circle. Anybody who's listening to this and wondering how they can up level their life, I can't say enough about that. That really does make a difference, a huge difference. Yeah. Hugely impactful. Thank you,
100%.
ladies, because you make my life better.
I was going to say, start a podcast with a couple of friends.
It's been way
There
fun.
you go.
Yeah.
Just do a Zoom call, nothing else.
Yeah.
Find-
Drink some
find-
wine.
Find people that support you and are different from you too. I think
different from you. Yes, they have
kind
to
of
be.
cool.
Yes, they have to be different from you because, and I mean, I'm not going to get political or anything, but I think that's part of the challenge with the world the way it is today. We're so siloed, and it is a little challenging sometimes to interact with people who are not from your space or like you or believe the same thing or whatever, or, just have a different way of seeing the world. So I would encourage everybody to, just check it out. You don't need to be best friends. You could just see how they are, Go join a club. I don't know.
Ask questions. Right?
Ask questions, right?
It's staying away from the Debbie Downers who want to suck the life out of you.
Yeah,
Like,
and that's kind of hard because, right, sometimes, talk about good coaching stuff, but sometimes you get into those relationships before you realize that you're like, oh, shoot, now what?
Thank you. I don't
Yeah,
have to.
how do I get out of this?
No, I don't have to put the expletive button on.
Right. I'm trying, Amy. Being very conscious. I want to swear so bad. Where does that come from? I don't know. Anyway.
Well, and maybe, and you going down this coachy path, it sounds to me a little bit like, a lot of that was really you finding ways to support yourself, which that's a huge deal. Like most people kind of flounder. And I shouldn't say most people, but a lot of people flounder when they've gone through something big and they know maybe in the back of their minds it's always kind of shaped the way they go through the world. But at the same time, like you took all these different steps and paths to find out like, okay, well, what does this mean for me? And, the curiosity part, and you are the curious monkey.
I am curious.
I mean, that's what led you to do those things, which in turn led you to be just a really good intuitive listener and coach and, someone who can lift other people up or at least understand what they're going through.
Yeah.
The empathy is what I see.
Empathy is definitely, I think it's one of, it's so interesting. Sometimes when you have something or when something is sort of intrinsic in you, like I always had that for animals, like even as a little kid and like, the little kids that were getting picked on, I always wanted to, take care of them or whatever. And so I think sometimes when you have something like that, and I have things about the two of you that I see in you, but you discount, you think everybody has them. Like it took me years to figure out, oh, you mean there are people who like don't do that like automatically? Like, are you sure? Like, doesn't everybody look at a little kitten on the side of the road and think they should pick that up? And I mean, like, isn't that what you do? Like, or somebody is crying, like, don't you want to, like, I don't know, sit with them or reach out or, yeah, I was shocked. I just,
No,
right? Yeah.
I'm there. I'll pick up the kitten. But if somebody's crying, I'm like, there now.
But it just blows my mind,
No,
right? Like,
Michelle, not everybody is like you.
it's so funny. And so it took me years to figure that out. Like that, yeah, that not everybody, not that I thought everybody was the same as I was, but I thought everybody was kind of the same as I was. Right? Like, I don't know. That's a weird thing. I hadn't even thought about that. Anyway.
And that's where you don't give yourself enough credit for
Yeah.
the coach skills that you
True.
have.
Uh,
You see that.
was that cat? No.
No, actually, that was just me. My hand bumped the
I'm
computer.
like, wait, Lara's moving around.
And
Earthquake going
my
on.
screen's moving around. Normally it would be cat.
What else do you guys have for me?
Ooh. Lara, do you have more questions?
One more.
Okay.
It takes us a little back into the woo-woo, but
my
I like to
favorite
think
place.
about the fact that we're all three in different decades of life, and I'm kind of stepping into your next one, but there's like, especially for women, there's like phases, and I feel like when you get to your like 50s and then 60s, you enter what's called the wise woman phase, and I just love that name because there's also the crone, and I feel like
I was
the
gonna
crone,
say it sounds a little better than the old crone, which is the
yeah,
one that I'm like, oh, there I'm
crone
headed
is
right
like
there.
the final one, which actually it's not nearly as bad as it sounds. But
I've never heard of the crone.
yeah, the
Oh,
crone is like,
yeah.
I'm thinking like 80s and 90s, but that's when you can just sit back and let everyone take care of you. It's almost like the crone is on the throne.
You
That's
gotta
how
practice for that
crone.
though.
Yeah.
Most of the people who make it, most women who make it to, well, anyway, I think it's really hard for women who do get to that point to just sit back and
exactly. I don't even know if that's 100% what they're supposed to do, but that's my plan.
I was like, you can all wait on me now. Yeah.
I just think of like, we do have people who listen who are way younger than all of us, actually. Like maybe not way, but some younger. And I just feel like since you are a wise woman and you have done so much and you've seen a lot of different things in your life, and I just would love to hear like, what would you say to someone like the younger version of you stepping into college or out of college for the first time? Like, what would you say to them now knowing what you know?
That's a good question, Lara.
That is a really good question. And I definitely had, because you go through coach training, you get asked all these kinds of questions. So I definitely have thought about this before, and I never come up with anything really satisfactory. Like, because it always sounds so, I'm like, well, sure, with hindsight, right? Anybody can figure this out. Like,
they can give good advice 3 years later.
Right? I think, and this will sound kind of silly based on what I just said and shared, but I guess two things. Generally speaking, this isn't like you can't say anything 100%. But I think there's some stat somewhere that says something like, 90% of the things you worry about happening never happen, right? And the thing that will take you out is something you couldn't have even imagined, right? So you spend so much time, if you're like me, when I have nieces that are, one's just turning 30 next month. And one's 31 and the other one is turning 25. And I see there's so much pressure on them to sort of figure things out. And I guess my first thing would be get comfortable with the idea that you are never going to figure this out. And you may get some periods of your life that feel pretty nice, like comfortable and you're like, and I can remember a few of those in my life, and I wish I had enjoyed them more. Like, instead of sitting there in that space of like, everything's kind of good. I guess I should be trying to figure out what I'm going to do next with my career, or how are we going to buy a house, or, how am I going to, like really, really, like when you notice them, really enjoy them. And I'm in a little bit of that space right now. And I keep trying to remind myself, like, it's okay to just sort of sit for a minute. You don't need to, suddenly decide to lose 100 pounds or, get the PhD or, it's like you get a little space in your calendar and you have to like fill it, right? Like, oh, I have a little room. I must need to self-improve, like there must be something I can do that. So I would say that enjoy those moments that feel okay. You don't have to constantly be trying to meet some goal or, like enjoy that. And at the same time, and it's easy for me to say, certainly because I can't do it, but don't be so afraid. Like, and everybody has a different kind of fear, fear of being voted off the island, fear of missing out. Like, mostly it's about making sure you don't get kicked out of the tribe, right? Because that's our biggest fear in our gut, is that we won't be accepted and then we'll starve to death. Like at its core, that is the biggest fear, that somehow something we're going to do where, say, whatever, will get us kicked out of the tribe. And yeah, it's okay. Sometimes it's really good to be kicked out of the tribe.
Depending on the tribe. Yeah.
Right. Sometimes
maybe that means it's time to find a new tribe.
Yeah, right. And you can do that. Yeah, so I do struggle with that question quite a bit, just because I'm like, oh yeah, because you just have to live your life, and it'd be really boring if everybody, well, first of all, nobody gets out unscathed, right? You cannot go through life and not have bad things happen to you. Life is filled with struggle, and it's the struggle that makes the life, right? Like the in-between parts are, just kind of parts we rush through, I think. I don't know. That's a really icky answer, but that's all I got.
No, that wasn't icky at all.
That was a great answer.
Yeah.
That's all I got. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved it. I mean, I'm hearing you say, like, it's kind of what we all know to be true, but we don't really practice it, which is like, enjoy the little moments, the in-between moments. When every minute of the day you're rushing to one activity to the next activity. Parents deal with this all the time with kids.
Yeah.
And you see it and you kind of breaks your heart, because at least in my case, I know how fast those years go, and my kids are grown now, and I look at pictures all over the house of them, and I just think, oh my gosh, where was I when this was happening? Like, I remember it, but I feel like I didn't savor it every second of it as much as I could have.
That's it, right? It's the savoring of it. And to what end? Like, what is it? I mean, I think people talk about it a lot more. Arthur Brooks talks about happiness, or, this, like this goal to be happy. And there is no end to that, right? Like there's no end to that. And yeah, we keep doing these things and rushing from this to that, thinking that the next thing's going to be the one that, oh, well, finally I'll be able to, like, then I'll have made it, right? Then I'll be able to relax. And I've met a lot of people over my lifetime, and I can't think of one person who's like, okay, yeah, It's all good. Everything ended up perfectly. I'm just going to hang out and, even the folks that I know that retired, um, you can't count on your health, right? So you may think you've got a great plan and you can get yourself financially to, that magical retirement in the sky. And then you end up with some crazy chronic disease. You can't control the other members of your family dying or having issues. Like you can't, there's no, yeah, if you don't enjoy the time that you have, trust me, things happen. Like, you think you have it all sorted out, and like, what is that thing? What do they say? You want to see God laugh, just tell him your plans. I think that's perfect. That's
Yeah.
perfect because, and I'm not saying don't try to, because I'm a huge fan of like conscious creation, and I do believe in, sort of manifesting a life that works for you, but all with the understanding that, yeah, all you can control is your little, like, how you show up in that moment. That is it, man, because there are a lot of other moving parts and people out there with all their moving parts and people. And, so.
Well, but that's what makes you you, is the idea that you can only control how you show up in the world. Like, to me, that's Michelle's mantra right there.
I wish I did that a little better, but yeah, that's a great mantra. I love that. We should close on that. Look at how wise I am.
Close
Way,
on
way
that.
better though.
Yeah.
I have. So to go back to the coaching thing,
Way
and
better.
just FYI, International Coaching Week is May 12th through the 18th. So if you're interested in coaching at all or finding a coach, you can check out the International Coaching Federation. They have all kinds of things going on that week. And Lara will put that in the show notes for us. But there's lots of cool info there and lots of great opportunities to try it out. But I would say without Amy saying I've gotten way better, I have gotten way better. And it's because I have worked with some amazing coaches and a couple of really good therapists. I'm just going to throw that out there too. To help me, figure out a way to pause before I act out of fear, because that's usually what happens. Something scares you and you are kind of like that little kitten in the corner who just starts hissing and, like, yeah, right? Because you're like, yeah, that's usually not the best approach, just in my experience. Taking a little moment and taking a breath and thinking about what you really want to do, that would probably be my advice. Breathe, right, Lara? Take a breath.
Breathe.
Take a breath.
Take a breath.
And
take
then,
a nice slow breath.
take a breath.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and you, again, like you have taken steps to be the person that you want to be and how you want to show up by doing these things purely because, yes, maybe you were interested in being a coach, but you weren't just jumping into things to do them. You were interested, and your curiosity led you to do these things that maybe you wouldn't have done 30 years ago or 20 years ago. You would have been too scared to do.
Yeah.
Just purely for the edification, just purely to know.
Yes.
And I think that's a huge, huge thing.
Yeah. There
doesn't have to be a timeline to everything.
No.
It could just be for your own interest.
Yes. And I think maybe that's the advice, right? Don't have attachment to every outcome, and you don't need to monetize every freaking thing that you want to do. Like, if you like it, just do it because you like it. It doesn't have to become,
like our podcast. We make zero money on this.
Just saying. Yeah.
We just do it for the
right
fun of it.
Right. No attachment to the outcome. Yeah, I think that
are rolling in the money.
Can't you guys tell?
Actually, it's cost us money.
But I think that's part of it. If it's something that really calls to you or that you really want to do, you can figure out a way to do it. And you can just do things because you like them. Like, it's okay. You don't let go of that attachment to the outcome. Just do the process is what you're after. What it feels like to do the thing.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah.
Can I write that down?
Yeah, sure. Well,
lots
it
of
was super fun. You guys can interview me anytime.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I
thank
wanted
you.
to be a journalist. I picked, an equine degree instead. I really second guess that some days, but yeah. Yeah.
Well, I loved it. Thank you for sharing all that. I learned some stuff I didn't know about you today.
Well, I can't wait to interview you two. I'm so glad I went first because now there's like no, like I'm done. Now I can really focus
Now
on
you can
you
just have
two.
fun and
Yeah.
play your
Take
real
a
role of
breather.
curious
Take a
monkey.
breath.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you. Thank you too for being such great co-hosts and friends and co-conspirators, really.
We love you too.
Co-conspirator.
What?
No, I won't cry. I won't cry.
Are you gonna cry?
Nope, not crying.
I'll
Not
cry
crying.
with you.
I'm not gonna cry. There's some empathy. Yay, Lara. There we go.
I have a lot of empathy.
You do. You do.
Well, I'm like,
Yeah.
Amy's like, you guys go cry over there. I'm gonna, So
Amy's like, I'm gonna go do some squats.
go run a couple miles. You all let me know when you're done.
I'll catch up.
We'll get all lovey
Let me
touchy.
know when you're done. And then, we'll figure it out. Yeah.
Well, you said it earlier about surrounding yourself with people that uplift you, and I think we have done that. The three of you guys, or
You
the
hang
three
with
of you,
matters.
the three of us, we uplift each other, I think.
We do. Yeah. It's been a joy.
Hopefully this episode uplifted our audience as well.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so. Yeah.
And with that, talking about the people that you hang around with, do we have to do our monkey chatter? Who you hang with matters.
Okay.
Let's do it.
Start us off.
We got it pretty good when we were all together, but
this is not. Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
Count us down.
Ready?
Monkey chatter. Monkey chatter. Who you hang with
matters.
Pretty good. It started off okay.
We'll see what happens. Thank you, everybody.
Bye. Peace. Thanks for listening to Monkey Chatter today. As a reminder, we want to let you know that while we think we are really smart, none of us are doctors or medical professionals. So anything that we say or suggest on this podcast should be run by your doctor before you make any major lifestyle, nutrition, or medication changes. Take care and be well, friends.